for so many people, for so many of us and some scholars, it seems to be an oxymoron to use the phrase moral economy. Because if you think about economy, the root meaning from Greek, it means family management or home administration. And the primary focus or the primary function of the home or the administration of the home is actually how to immunize the family from material lack. But in recent years, and for so many people, so many individuals, so many groups, it's difficult to say that the economy is serving that purpose. The economy has changed from immunizing the family from lack to actually perpetuating lack or generating that kind of lack. And so for several years, the economy has been disarticulated from its moral content and its moral purpose, serves quite a different purpose. And that makes this concept quite interesting to see really, what does it do? Why has it attracted so much attention in recent years? But how did it develop as an intellectual kind of concept, a concept that we can use as a backcloth to analyze our experiences, our observations and data, and so on. In the last 60 years, therefore, the moral economy concept has been used as a way to rearticulate, as an attempt to critique the disconnect between morality and the economy, or the obligation to safeguard individuals and communities from material lack. So, even though in the title of my remarks, I said this concept is nebulous, which means it's actually like amorphous, flexible, it is blurry, you can fit in whatever you want to fit in it and let it stick. But indeed, it is an activist concept. It is an engaged concept. It's a concept that speaks to critical concerns about how society is going and who is really responsible, who is I'll call him the chief priest or the chief prophet. I'm using Pentecostal kind of concepts now. The chief prophet is Edward Palmer Thompson, who himself was actually a public figure. He was an activist. He was involved in public protests. And the picture you see there was taken in 1980, where he was addressing a public protest or individuals involved in public protest. So indeed, this concept is a concept that challenges that which we experience in today's society. And according to Thompson, he says the best thing we can do, that is the best thing that affluent societies can do, is to send promoters of riot to hungry societies. I'm sure if he were alive today and in South Africa, the South African government would arrest him because they're beginning to round up those who instigated the last riot. But if there is something indeed that we found very relevant in many African societies, from Algeria to Cameroon to Nigeria, Mali, Zimbabwe, just keep going, Botswana or Tunisia, Egypt, and Swaziland. It is mass protest, mass discontent, and if you add to that, looting. Indeed, according to Thompson, riots stave off starvation, and it keeps rulers on their feet. It keeps them on the straight and narrow. So indeed, riots produce and demonstrate the audacity of despair, too hard and too loud to ignore. Just the statistics about the South African situation is in itself daunting. 40,000 businesses affected, nearly or more than 330 people dead during the last riot, and 150,000 jobs at risk, plus 5 billion rand worth of goods destroyed and so on. So indeed, in the aftermath of that event, suddenly the government has reinstated the withdrawn social welfare grant magically and miraculously, as if they were listening to what Thompson was saying, that riots make governments listen. And societies that do not riot, that do not protest publicly, tend to experience material lack. That was his. And he gave an example of India and Ireland in the 19th and in the 18th and 19th century. So indeed, this is an activist concept, and his redefinition was twisted, was done in that way, in which to critique the way the market society and its constituent parts are not working to immunize the poor against lack and starvation. So we also ask in this conference, how is it that religious groups and reforms, they usually, and religious organizations, they usually promise their followers and the larger society that there is a better way to do things, there is a better way of life. They promise them the good life here on earth, and also even a best possible life in some future life after life, and so on. So to what extent and in what respect are they keeping to this vision and promise? Perhaps in the course of this conversation, we will have some insights into this kind of answers, or we will have insights into reframing this question. And I'll say this is, the moral economy concept has become a very popular concept in recent years. And there are full-length books and thousands of articles trying to examine different ways that the concept has been or could be used or have been applied to observations, data, both historical and contemporary. I'll give an example from just a journal that was published last year, that is Humanity, an international journal of human rights, humanitarianism, and development. Its 2020 edition, volume 11, issue 2, was dedicated to the moral economic concept. And the guest editor, Jeremy Edelman, says that, yes, the purpose was to examine the multiple global origins of the idea that become the moral economy. And based on that, indeed, the central ideas of the essays, we had to say that the concept, wherever it was used in contemporary time, has always been to critique the market economy. And it contains within itself a critique of the market. But why is that so? And I've said it is because of like the spirit of the times in which we live in. And the spirit of the times in which we live in is the spirit of market society. It's driven by deregulation, freestanding or assumed freestanding market, extreme competition, and profiteering. So indeed, the moral economy concept in itself is framed as a contra to these experiences, to these features of contemporary society. And religious organizations or institutions are not immune to what goes on in the larger society. Have religious organizations not been affected by the features of modern society and contemporary practice? You know, I do not have an answer, but I think that in the course of this conversation, we will be able to articulate some kind of understanding about what is happening in specific case studies or contexts and so on. The way I've mentioned E.P. Thompson and the way he resurrected the concept and gave it a new life and made it an activist critical concept, but he did not invent the phrase itself. The first known use of the phrase in English language was in 1729, and it was in a sermon, in a Christian sermon preached at the University of Cambridge. Then the meaning was simply that there is a moral order in the world, and God, the Christian God this time, the Christian God is a moral being that relates to the created world in a very specific moral context. So indeed, sin criminal activities or antisocial activities, their sin is punished to maintain and restore the moral order. Indeed. So we've had some scholars who think that E.P. Thompson coined the phrase, but they were mistaken, indeed. He didn't, and the phrase pre-existed for nearly 300 years before then, and during this period, with little variations, it simply meant divine judgment for human felons or the punishment of public offenders as a way of restoring, maintaining the moral order. And even the French philosopher also used it, but used it as a way of looking at philosophical enterprise to establish the superiority of a general will over individual wills or the wills of associations in a civil society. And looking at it this way, indeed, we see that it is a Christian concept. And being a Christian concept, it has in itself a kind of, it contains moral ideals and expectations in that way. But the way the concept has been used or is being used these days is attributed to the work of E.P. Thompson, especially the now classic text from 1963, The Making of the English Working Class, in which he used the phrase actually 7 times and defined it in different ways. One of those instances was a citation, a quotation of a chapter of a pre-existing text that used moral economy as a chapter title. But he never in any way, he did not specify that he was borrowing it and retooling it in a specific way to suit his own data, to suit his own observations, and so on.
Prof,
so indeed,
maybe, I don't know, in regards to time, can see 2 minutes.
2 minutes, all right, sure, it's okay. So for him, therefore, moral economy is a set of legitimizing assumptions, obligations, and expectations, or normative attitudes concerning social relations and social behaviors. And these normative attitudes are created and sustained by gift-giving, communal attitudes, and kinship structure, so on. Now, the way I've said there are so many ways the concept has been used, and it can be used as a prescriptive idea, which means it's critical, it says what's to be done. It can also be used as a heuristic teaching way, and it can be used as an explanatory concept to explain social experiences, social events, and so on. And because it can be used in so diverse ways, in so different ways, and because of its elasticity, indeed, it is a problematic concept too that calls for critical attention to it, that we should re-examine every time how we use it, the way it functions, and what utility that we derive from it. Because indeed, it may be confusing. It sounds very close to ethical economy, but ethical economy means quite something different, so on. Finally, before Elias kicks me away, I will return to the chief prophet of this concept, that is E.P. Thompson, who says that riot and the threat of riot may have starved of starvation, sometimes by actually forcing prices down, and more generally by forcing governments to attend to the plight of the poor, and by stimulating parish relief and local charity. Actually, if we look at it, it says the second one is the one that really concerns us, that parish relief indeed is how religious groups and organizations intervene in alleviating material lacks of either its members or members of the larger society. So indeed, this is what concerns us, and the kind of research and presentations that we will be hearing today may help us, or will help us really find out how religious organizations are responding in this way, in this time and place. Your research and presentation will help us tease out answers, insights, or even ask different questions about the relevance of the moral economy concept to religious reforms in Africa and elsewhere. Once more, I say welcome to this event. Thank you.